On April 21, 2025, Pope Francis died. Soon after this news was reported, speculation began as to who would be the next Bishop of Rome. So we present the cardinals who potentially have the best chance of becoming Pope. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Italy, Secretary of State of the Holy See since 2013, considered second in command at the Vatican so far. Trusted by Pope Francis, so Parolini's appointment as Pope will likely be a continuation of his predecessor's policies. He is revered for his ability to mediate between different factions in the Church, which may contribute to his perception as a safe choice as a future Pope. In a speech at the UN Forum, he condemned the increase in armed conflict, abortion, and gender ideology, stressing the need for concerted action for peace and the protection of life. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, Italy, Archbishop of Bologna and President of the Italian Episcopal Conference. He is associated with the progressive current in the Catholic Church. In 2020, in his introduction to the book The Church and Homosexuality by Luciana Moha, he stated that the Church should look at people as God does, so that homosexuals would feel a full part of the Church community. In 2022, the Archdiocese of Bologna, which he heads, witnessed a quasi-wedding of a homosexual couple in the church. Zuppi was informed. Although church teaching forbids such ceremonies, the cardinal's failure to publicly condemn the event was interpreted as tacit acceptance. Zuppi also condemned Donald Trump's migration policies and was involved in helping the poor, humanitarian missions, and organizing interreligious prayer meetings. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Philippines, the dicastery's pro-prefect for evangelization and former Archbishop of Manila, is one of the Catholic Church's most recognizable figures in Asia. He promotes evangelization based on joy, humility, and closeness to the people. Tagle postulates that evangelization should be the daily task of every believer, not just specialists. He represents the progressive wing of the Church, although he remains faithful to its teachings. On social issues such as migration and climate change, he takes a position in line with Pope Francis's encyclicals. With regard to LGBT people, his statements are cautious but marked by pastoral concern. He avoids condemnation, emphasizing accompaniment and mercy. In an interview with Catholic News Service, the Cardinal expressed concern that church teaching on family, marriage, or sexuality is not fully understood by the faithful. He suggested that the Church should change the way it communicates to make it more understandable and accessible to modern people without changing doctrine. But the primary role in sex education should be played by parents. The Cardinal Tagle rejects Pope Francis's revolution narrative, arguing that emphasis such as going to the periphery or being a church of the poor are nothing new for Catholics in Asia. Cardinal Robert Sarah, Guinea, former prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship. One of the most outspoken figures of the conservative wing of the Catholic Church, Cardinal Sarah sees the liturgy as central to the life of the Church. He has repeatedly called for a return to deep respect for the Eucharist and silence in the liturgy, stressing that the loss of adoration of God leads to crises in the Church and the world. The Cardinal strongly criticizes the imposition of gender ideology on African countries, describing it as a form of modern colonialism. He stresses that marriage in Africa is an indissoluble union between a man and a woman, and that attempts by the West to redefine the family are an imposition of foreign values. Cardinal Sarah strongly condemns abortion, calling it a barbaric crime against the innocent. He points out the inconsistency of societies that protect life in the face of pandemics while legalizing abortion. On migration, the Cardinal stresses the right of nations to distinguish between refugees and economic migrants. He points out that the right of every nation to protect its culture and identity from the ideology of liberal individualism cannot be undermined, which promotes the obliteration of borders and cultures. Cardinal Sarah criticizes attempts to align the Church with the values of modern Western societies. He points out that the Church is not created to listen, but to teach, being a mother and teacher. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa Italy, Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, known for his commitment to peace, interreligious dialogue, and support for Christians in the Holy Land. On the issue of the war in Palestine, Cardinal Pizzaballa unequivocally condemned the violence used by both sides in the conflict. In a pastoral letter, he criticized both the Hamas attack on Israel and Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. Cardinal Pizzaballa stresses the need for openness and listening to different voices in the Church. Cardinal Jean-Marc Avelin, France Metropolitan of Marseille, President of the Episcopal Conference of France since April 2025, views aligned with the vision of Pope Francis. Cardinal Avelin, as born in Algeria and raised in Marseille, has a deep understanding of multiculturalism. He advocates an inclusive church that promotes dialogue with Islam and other religions. He is committed to helping those displaced and having difficulty integrating into society. According to him, the Church should focus less on asserting its identity in the face of a secularized world and more on serving God's relationship with the world as it is. Cardinal Anders Arborelius, Sweden, Bishop of Stockholm, former Lutheran and Sweden's first cardinal. He represents an approach that combines fidelity to the Catholic tradition with openness to dialogue and contemporary social challenges. He notes that Swedish society, despite deep secularization, is beginning to feel tired of the lack of spiritual reference points. He points to a growing interest in religion and spirituality, which could be an opportunity for a new evangelization. He places great emphasis on ecumenical and interreligious dialogue. He stresses the importance of cooperation between different Christian denominations and with other religions. The Cardinal recognizes the positive impact of migration on the Church of Sweden, noting that the influx of immigrants contributes to its development and revitalization. He supports integration initiatives and promotes openness to cultural diversity in the spirit of Christian love of neighbor. Cardinal Arborelius stresses that the Catholic Church in Sweden, although a minority, enjoys respect by consistently sticking to its values and avoiding involvement in culture wars. He notes that many Swedes appreciate the stability and moral clarity the Church offers. Cardinal Peter Erdo, Hungary, Metropolitan of Esztergom, Budapest, Primate of Hungary. He is seen as a figure who unites various currents in the Church. On the one hand, he enjoys the respect of traditional circles, thanks in part to his stance on the Latin Mass. On the other hand, he is accepted by liberals. He is regarded as a man who could, as Pope, unite a sharply divided Church. Cardinal Erdo stresses that faith is the most important element in a person's life. In 2015, responding to concerns about Muslim immigration to Europe, he pointed to Hungary's historic, tragic experience with Islam and stressed the importance of interreligious dialogue. Cardinal William Eijk, Netherlands, Metropolitan of Utrecht, Primate of the Netherlands, one of the most outspoken conservative voices in the Catholic Church, cautions against seeing salvation in church reforms such as structural or liturgical changes. Instead, he stresses the importance of preaching the gospel and celebrating the liturgy with dignity. He points out that in parishes where the faith is well preached and the liturgy is celebrated with dignity, churches are overcrowded. He points out that secularization in the Netherlands began as early as the 1960s. Many Catholics had no personal relationship with Christ, and religiosity was often superficial and socially conditioned. The rise of wealth and individualism has led to a weakening of ties to the church and a loss of faith. In the face of the dominant culture of secularism and individualism, Cardinal Ike proposes the creation of a creative Catholic minority that will be able to Christianize a new culture when the current one collapses. He points out that the culture of secularism and individualism is experiencing a decline, and one must be ready to create a new culture based on Christian values. Ike is a strong defender of Catholic sexual and marriage ethics. In his book, The Bond of Love, he addresses topics related to marital morality and sexual ethics, which has met with controversy in the Netherlands, where distribution of the book has been banned in many places. Cardinal Charles Bo, Myanmar, Archbishop of Rangoon, the first cardinal from Myanmar. Known for his commitment to peace, human rights, and interreligious dialogue. He has consistently called for an end to violence in Myanmar, especially after the coup d'état in February 2021 that led to civil war. In his speeches, he stresses the need for dialogue and reconciliation, calling on all parties to the conflict to cease fire and allow humanitarian aid. However, Bo strongly advocates the rights of minorities, including Christians and Muslims, who are persecuted in predominantly Buddhist Myanmar. He condemns Buddhist nationalism and fundamentalist movements that attack religious minorities. Bo has faced criticism for his dealings with the military junta. He has explained his actions as an attempt at dialogue to protect civilians, but to some, his approach seems too conciliatory. As president of the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences since 2019, Bo has promoted a dynamic and missionary church that responds to the challenges of modern times. In 2021, he said, "Culture and religion in Asia go hand in hand, and traditional respect for the family remains crucial." Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungu, Democratic Republic of Congo Archbishop of Kinshasa. His views reflect both a conservative stance on doctrinal issues and a firm commitment to social justice, peace, and criticism of exploitation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Cardinal Ambongo is known for his conservative approach to church teaching, particularly with regard to morality and the family. He explicitly opposed the Vatican document Fiducia Supplicans, which allows blessings for same-sex couples. As leader of the African bishops, he announced that such blessings would not be given in Africa, arguing that they are contrary to African culture and could lead to scandals among the faithful. Ambongo has been a strong critic of the Democratic Republic of Congo authorities, especially in terms of corruption, mismanagement, and insecurity. He accuses politicians of engaging in petty squabbles over authority and resources while the country descends into chaos. For years, he has denounced the illegal exploitation of the DRC's wealth, such as gold, coltan, and diamonds, by foreign powers and corporations. Ambongo has expressed controversial opinions about the West, especially on moral and social issues. Although he has criticized some Vatican decisions, he believes in synodality or communal decision-making in the Church. Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, Poland, Prefect of the Dicastery for the Ministry of Mercy, Papal Almsman, called the Pope's Robin Hood. Known for his radical approach to mercy and closeness to the poor. Since 2013, he has been organizing material and spiritual assistance to the homeless, refugees, and the excluded. Examples of his activities include turning on electricity in a Roman tenement for 500 people who were without power, which he considered a crime in accordance with the gospel, taking the poor to the circus, or providing ambulances to Ukraine during the war. In his book, The Scent of God, he stresses that help to the needy must be immediate and that the church should be an emergency room for the suffering. Krajewski expresses an inclusive approach to all people, regardless of their identity or orientation. In 2019, during the Lord's pilgrimage to Jasna Gora, he stated that the participants of the Equality March are also the Church and deserve respect. The Cardinal openly criticizes priests and bishops living in luxury, believing that wealth distances them from their parishioners and the Gospel. He believes that the clergy should share what they have and focus on serving those in need rather than accumulating wealth. His vision of the Church, inspired by Pope Francis and the reforms of Vatican II, is progressive and evangelical, which makes him a symbol of the Church of the poor. Whether any of them will become the head of the Catholic Church will soon become clear. It is worth remembering, however, that when it comes to electing the Bishop of Rome, favorites often fail, and the saying that whoever enters the conclave a pope leaves a cardinal comes true. Thanks for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe to the channel and leave a paw up.